Now, I know what you are probably thinking if you've never done fasting or intermittent fasting before, that I must be starving myself. But the best part of all this is that I am never starving. In this video, we go over my results, both the good and the bad, of a 3-day fast that I recently did. I can really show you in depth as to what is going on in our bodies when we fast or intermittently fast, because I get my blood drawn daily during the whole fasting process, and I hook myself up to a blood sugar monitor. And as well, I weigh myself every morning, so I am able to really track what goes on with our bodies during a fast. And I'm going to analyze those results with you now. Lately, there has been a lot of major research done inferring that fasting has incredible health benefits. Because of those studies, like always, I decided to do an experiment of those studies on myself. From October 22nd to 30th, I fasted for 3 days and recorded my blood sugar, weight, cholesterol, insulin, leptin, norepinephrine, and growth hormone. And if those mean nothing to you, I will explain as I go what they are. And I will do it in layman's terms, and why I measured them, and what the results mean for you practically. And it's mostly all good, so you're gonna love it if this is what you wanna do. Nothing in this video is medical advice though. Just my own opinion based off of the research I've seen and results from the testing I've done on myself. Let's start off with one great part about fasting, maybe even the best. So I use a scale that records my weight onto an app. Not only does it record my weight, but it figures out my body mass index and many other health indicators. You can see on the morning before I start the fast, I weigh about 192.2 pounds on October 27th. Now, I should note that each day I weigh myself at a consistent time, which for me was after my first bathroom visit in the morning after I wake up. This is to keep variables affecting my weight as constant as possible each day. So I start my fast after lunch on that day.
All right, this is my last meal before the fast. I can't believe I'm doing this. Wish me luck. I'm pretty nervous. Good chicken. I make my own little tacos. That looks probably gross. Anyway, last meal before the fast, and 3 days of fasting. Let's see what happens.
So when I weigh myself the next morning, I haven't eaten dinner or breakfast, and I weigh in at about 189.2 pounds. So in one day, I lose 2 pounds. Now on the next day, I haven't eaten a meal for a day and a half. So that is 2 dinners, 1 lunch, and 2 breakfasts that I have now missed. Now, I weigh at 187.2 pounds. Then on the final day, I have missed 3 days of meals and I weigh 185.6 pounds. So from day 1, I now weigh 6 pounds less. Now, these other graphs on the screen show my projected BMI and body fat percentages. You can see also they all go down over the 3 days. Now, while this is all a fast, what you may want to know is I am an intermittent faster, and I'll go over more about that in a minute. About 5 years ago, I weighed 235 to 240 pounds. It was then I decided to start intermittent fasting, which for me meant I never snack and I never eat breakfast. And I also do a few other things like cut out sugar, and now I weigh 185.6 pounds. So over the last 5 years, I have lost 50 pounds. Now, I know what you are probably thinking if you've never done fasting or intermittent fasting before, that I must be starving myself. But the best part of all this is that I am never starving either. So we will see why I lost so much weight and why I am never hungry in this and in future videos I will do as well. Oh, also, if you are interested in this scale specifically and all the things I use to monitor my health, I have them linked to in the description below. Okay, on to the most dangerous part about fasting and what you need to know before you decide to do a large fast like this one. If you decide to do one at all, that is. Your blood sugar is going to be affected quite a bit by a fast. Now, this is normal, but it could be bad. Blood sugar is so important because this is what your body uses to make energy to live on. Without food, this level can get really low and cause health issues you should be aware of and that I will show you now because it affected me quite a bit. So I hooked myself up to a glucose or blood sugar monitor. As you can see from this readout, I naturally have low blood sugar hovering just above 70 units most of the time, and that is the lowest normal limit even when I am not fasting. But when I fast, it's so low that sometimes at night you can see this red area. This is where my blood sugar drops below 70 units. Now on October 27th, you can see my blood sugar starts to spike around 2 p.m. This is because I ate my last meal right around 1:40 p.m. And it takes about a half an hour for the blood to start spiking, and you won't see any spikes before that on this day because I don't eat breakfast or snack, so there is no spike before that. But here is where I run into a problem. On October 28th, my blood sugar drops below the normal level almost all night and day. But what is really scary, especially in my situation, is what I was doing is more dangerous than a normal fast. I am also getting 6 vials of blood drawn once a day for this video. After my first blood draw, 24 hours into my fast, something funny starts to happen. In fact, my vision started acting up.
It felt like there was this slight lag to my vision, almost like a blur.
It went away after like 30 minutes after my blood draw. But then again, it came back at night. And now I had been fasting for about 34 hours at night, and new symptoms started. I started to slightly sweat, my heart started beating fast, and as I laid down, my legs started to feel numb. That's when I took my blood sugar, and scarily, it was getting close to 54 units, which means I am at risk of going into a coma or a seizure, possibly. Now quickly, I'm just gonna put up a little diary session of that night when I noticed all these symptoms.
So I tested my blood results right now, and they're around 57. It seems for me, my max for fasting is about 1 day.
After this, if my blood sugar ever got close to 54 units, I would take small sips of water with just a little bit of sugar in it to keep my blood sugar safe. And it was less than a 1/4 cup of sugar water that I had to drink. Even still, you can see my blood glucose stays low for the rest of the fast. It starts to get really low again near my last blood draw on the last day. This started to worry me again, so you can see I am taking my glucose levels a lot as I am getting worried about them being too low. And here you can see this spike is when I finally eat my first meal after 3 days of mostly fasting. And soon we will get to see why when we get to see my hormones from my blood draws. On a different note, as I said, glucose gives you energy, and I was running low on glucose. So you would think I would be low on energy this whole time. But what was funny, it was exactly the opposite. I kid you not. All of these things did not happen at all. One reason this happens is something called metabolic switching. And this is where your body starts burning through fat for energy and produces ketones for energy and mental acuity. And for the other reasons why it didn't do those things, we will look at my hormones that I measured now. Let's start with the main hunger hormones: insulin, leptin, and ghrelin. Insulin is one of your body's coolest hormones. What insulin does is move blood sugar or glucose molecules into the cells that need it. Basically, if a cell like a muscle cell needs energy, it puts a signal on its surface of the cell to flag down insulin. Insulin sees the flag and opens the gate for glucose to flow into the cell so it can get the energy it needs. If your cells don't need glucose, then insulin moves the glucose instead into the fat cells where it stores glucose as fat, and therefore you gain fat weight. If you are not consuming food or sugar, then your body has no need for insulin because it doesn't have any sugar to move anywhere. And as you have seen, that is exactly what happened to my blood sugar. It went down and down and down. So my body doesn't have that much need for insulin. On day 1, we start at about 5 units of insulin concentration. Now, this blood draw is actually just before my last meal. So day 2, now I've been fasting, I have missed 2 meals at this point, and you see my insulin level is down 40%. That night, remember, I had a little snack to raise my blood sugar, so the next day it goes up a little bit because there was a little need for it. But my last day, my glucose is down to 1.2 units, and that is 76% lower than day one. So why does this matter to you? 2 main reasons. 1, insulin is one of many hormones tied to our mood. That's right. The lower your insulin, the better you feel. So this is one of a few reasons why during a fast, you actually start to feel better and less grumpy over time. This article showed people felt like they had a better quality of life when they took a drug that lowered their insulin. And the second reason why you want low insulin, if possible, the lower the insulin you have, the less hungry you are. We all think that hunger goes like this. The more time goes from when you have eaten, the hungrier and hungrier and hungrier you get. And that is completely false. The hunger pathways are actually very complex, but I will try to simplify it like this. There is a balance in your body that tells you whether or not you are hungry, much like a scale. On one side of the balance is a stack of hormones that tells you you're hungry. On the other side is where the hormones tell you that your hunger has been satisfied, or what we call satiated. What insulin does is it blocks the ability of stacking up the satiated side of the scale. So the more that side doesn't stack up, the more easily the scale is tipped to the hungry side. Conversely, the less insulin your body has, the more it can appropriately tell if you are actually hungry because it doesn't block the satiated hormones. That is why eating table sugar is the worst for any diet. It produces more insulin, which always tips the scale to make sure you think you are always hungry. You should also watch my exercise and hormone level video after this if you want to see what exercise does to your insulin levels, and eventually I'll do one on sugar too. Anyway, you can see my body was telling me each day that I just wasn't that hungry. I think the next 2 hormones will further show you why I wasn't hungry. Leptin. Going back to our scale demonstration, leptin is that main hormone that when it stacks up, it tells you that you're satisfied and satiated and no longer hungry. Now, the prevailing wisdom is that the more your fat cells expand and grow, the more leptin your fat cells produce. Eventually, this tells your body you're satisfied, not hungry, and it doesn't need to eat. However, that explanation by most research that I have seen seems to be incomplete. And from our results today, it confirms that that's not quite complete. Here on my test results, you can see my body produced 1.6 units of leptin before my fast. On the first day, that number decreases as expected to about 1.1 units. Now, so far this makes sense because my fat cells are likely getting broken down because they are releasing stored energy. So that way I get the energy my body needs that it's not getting from the food that I'm not eating. Remember how my projected body fat from the scale is going down every day? So you think my leptin would become less and less because leptin is excreted the wider your fat cells get. But on the next day, my body produced more leptin than before I had started. And on the last day, it was just about the same as before I started my fast. What we do understand is what this is going to do for my hunger. It is going to make me less hungry. And that is exactly how I felt because there was no insulin to really block that sensation as we saw my low insulin levels earlier. This is partly why I didn't feel insanely hungry even after 3 days of fasting. But honestly, hunger has not been bad. I've been able to have tons of energy, as you will see, and I haven't been grumpy at all. I feel like I've actually been in quite a good mood. I explained the hunger as being different. It's like this slight stinging or burning in the stomach, as opposed to this extreme desire for food. I think we all know that feeling where you can almost feel like the food is calling to you and we have to go get food from the fridge or the cupboard. It's just very present in our minds that food is there. This hunger was a little bit different. It was just a little bit of burning, a little discomfort in the stomach. So now let's move on to where the hunger does come from. Ghrelin. Ghrelin is the main hormone on the other side of that scale or balance. When it stacks up, you will be hungry, and thus it is called the hunger hormone. Ghrelin is produced when your stomach is empty, but when your stomach gets full, it stops producing it. So while leptin is responsible for your hunger levels based on your body's needs, ghrelin regulates your hunger based on what your body thinks is available in your environment. So let me explain. For example, if you eat every morning at 8 a.m., your body gets in a rhythm of thinking that time is when there's food in your current environment. So it will produce tons of ghrelin every morning at 8 a.m. But if you stop eating breakfast every morning, then each day your body will produce less and less ghrelin until you are no longer hungry at that time. That is what this graph from a study of fasting ghrelin shows. Now, I was not able, unfortunately, to test for ghrelin, but this graph is exactly what happened to my ghrelin levels as well. Before we move on, I just want to point out not only does fasting make you less hungry, it also takes away hunger cravings. What this study and these graphs show is that eliminating meals is the best way to suppress cravings as opposed to just trying to eliminate calories and eating the same amount of meals. You can see the cravings for almost any type of food goes down when you fast as opposed to just eat a little less at every meal. Growth hormone, or GH, is one of many hormones that serves to maintain blood glucose within a normal range. And ghrelin also helps to regulate growth hormone. Now, if you watch my exercise hormone video, you know what exercises boost growth hormone levels and why that is great for you. Because growth hormone is good for breaking down fat. But it's good at building up almost every other good tissue like muscles, neurons, and healing tissues. It also may have an effect on anti-aging properties as well. But there are other ways to increase your growth hormone naturally besides working out. We can see in this study of growth hormone that it also increases the longer that you fast. And you can see the same thing on day 2. It's less than 0.1 units. But on day 3, it rose to 0.1 units. Not a lot. And the last day, it increased to 0.3 units. Now, this may not seem like a lot, and it's not. But that is because I was trying to capture my growth hormone at its resting level and not at its peak. And I was pretty sure I knew at what time to do that. You can see as the resting levels of growth hormone rise deeper into the fast, the peaks of growth hormone are also amplified as well. It is those amplified peaks where you get the real benefit of growth hormone. But watch my exercise video if you want to see what huge peaks you can induce from exercise and which ones will peak that the most. Norepinephrine. One of the big reasons to restrict calories by intermittent fasting, as opposed to just eating less calories at every meal, is that when you eat many meals with fewer calories, your resting metabolic rate drops as well. So you don't really lose weight because you're burning less energy as well if you just restrict your calories. Your resting energy expenditure is how many calories you burn by doing nothing, and that's just for reference so you know what I'm talking about. Now, when you do intermittent fasting, your resting energy expenditure goes up, which means you burn even more calories even when just at rest and throughout your day. I will show you. Norepinephrine is one marker that indicates your metabolic rate going up or down. Now, before I start, my levels are at 556 units. However, the next day, my units go down just a tad to 529 units as I fasted for 24 hours. So my energy that day was not bad, but it wasn't great as well. And I make note of that in my diary session the next morning. Oh, I felt maybe a little lazy. When I would go up the stairs, it would wind me just ever so slightly, but nothing that bad. But by the following day, my levels shoot up to 667 units, and even slightly higher the next day to 672. So my resting metabolic rate and my resting energy expenditure are going up as well. I was so surprised that, in fact, just before I end my fast, I stated in this diary session, I feel like I can run a marathon right now. So I was not lethargic, I did not feel lazy, and even right now, I feel like I can just run a marathon even. I'm sure I can't, but if I did, it feels like I could. To further explain this phenomenon, I like the way hormone.org explains what norepinephrine does. It increases blood pressure, breaks down fat, increases attention and focus, and it can lead to very happy feelings. In one of my diary sessions, I talk with my wife, who has her own YouTube channel as well, and she says that I was in a good mood the last few days. As far as being happy, I don't think I was very grumpy at all last night. I don't know, what do you think, Julie?
No, you were like super nice.
I was super nice. These are all the opposite of what you think you would feel during a fast. But just to further prove that I had energy, look at the steps I take on these days. The day I start my fast, almost 5,000 steps. My first full day into the fast, I was slightly above 5,000 steps. And then my last full day of fasting, 8,300 steps. Now, this could be coincidence in that I happened to take a lot more steps that day for things that I needed to do, but it at least shows you I wasn't dying from lack of energy. Though I can tell you, I actually felt like working out that day. I had energy. I will link to my specific Garmin watch below if you want to track your health benefits, and my watch does much more than just steps. So, from norepinephrine, you can tell that my resting energy expenditure goes up, and restricting calories does not do that. It goes down. Other benefits. The New England Journal of Medicine is one of the most prestigious health journals in the world. Early this year, they put out a study that explained how good intermittent fasting is for you. Remember, for this journal to print research, it has to be airtight research, really good research. So this isn't some hokey journal out there. This article claims intermittent fasting lowers obesity, cardiovascular indicator problems, lowers risk of tumors, increases treatment outcome for cancer, delays neurological diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. I mean, you name it, atherosclerosis, multiple sclerosis, inflammation, healing. It is almost like a miracle drug if you will do it. The problem is, will you do it? My recommendations and dental points of view. Here is my recommendations, but always check with your doctor before doing anything like this. If you're going to do more than a day fast, be safe and pay attention to any health risk and have some sugar ready in case you get those odd symptoms. I would only do it once in a while and only if you are pretty overweight. Also, if you have bad eating habits and you want to kick one of those habits, I would recommend starting a fast before you decide to kick any food out of your diet. And that is just because of that cravings graph we looked at. It really does get rid of your cravings. I can tell you, while I felt a little hungry on my fast, I didn't crave anything at all. Nothing sounded that good to me, even though I hadn't eaten for 3 days. However, for most people, I recommend intermittent fasting. You can get most of the benefits of fasting that way. How you want to do it is up to you. For me, up until this point, I do a full 24-hour fast once a month, and I never eat breakfast. So each day I was fasting about 17 hours. I almost never snack unless I feel rude rejecting a meal from someone trying to give me something to eat, or if I feel out of place by not eating. And then I just eat, and so sometimes I break it. Now I will probably change to doing a full day fast once a week or maybe 3 times a month. And I'm going to still keep skipping breakfast and no snacking in my diet whatsoever. Some people do an every other day fast, or other people do 2 days a week fast and they still eat breakfast. Because remember, we are all different. I wouldn't tell my wife to do my fast that I'm doing. In fact, my wife, she also likes to live healthy, so sometimes she tries to copy the diets and things I'm doing, and it inevitably does weird things to her health because she is naturally very slender and it's just totally different than my body style. As a dentist, I really feel like intermittent fasting isn't just a fad, but the way we should be living. Why? People that constantly eat or snack are at much higher risk for cavities as well. This is because every time you eat, the pH in your mouth drops. And this means that your mouth is more acidic in nature when you have a low pH. So if you're always eating and snacking, your mouth is always acidic. It never has that chance to buffer completely, which highly increases your risk for cavities. It just seems like that's the way it's supposed to be. Everything points to us as humans, especially of developed nations, overloading our bodies with food, and it is becoming more and more obvious the health crisis we develop because of it. On my channel, I do health experiments on myself all the time, as you can find in this playlist. I also have the best travel and home automation recommendations as in these other two playlists. I always strive to blow your mind and never waste your time. So like, subscribe, and watch one of those now.